We'll start out with a presentation. EMS, ambulance update in Webster. Actually, there's two presentations. One, is it Dan? Are you giving it?
Yes.
Dan, okay. Dan Reardon from Penfield Volunteer Ambulance will present on the first 3 months of Penfield Volunteer Ambulance, covering the whole town of Webster, including the West Webster Fire District and the Northeast Joint Fire District. And then it doesn't say it on here, but I think Russ Ziskin will then give an update on the long-term EMS in Webster efforts of the committee that he and Councilman Cahill co-chair. So, Dan, I'll hand the baton out to you.
Okay, I can kind of see the TV screen. Thank you, Tom. Dan Reardon, the EMS manager at Penfield Ambulance. We just hit day 90 today of servicing the whole town of Webster. I'd like to say it's gone quite well. Obviously, it's taken a team, a lot of communication, a lot of direction, and leadership. I feel kind of quite blessed when I have a board of directors that have been very supportive of this effort, and a whole operations team, and a group of 30 full-time employees, which grew from just 20 until we had to take over the whole town of Webster, and about 45 part-time employees, and a large team of another 40 volunteers. But nothing's perfect, nothing's seamless, but the first 90 days, I'll say, have gone quite well in service of the whole town. We do have the stats. In total, in that 90 days, 1,119 calls. We have mutual aid at 36, just covering right below 97%. Department of Health would like you to be right around 90%. The Melrose region, as an ALS agency, should be above 92 to 93%. It's impossible to cover 100% of your calls. It's also not healthy from a fiscal budgetary perspective to cover all of your calls. It's just also quite impossible. We only have so many ambulances. We did just purchase our 8th because of this endeavor and growth. And we are staffing 5 trucks to service both towns with a robust plan to move up and move down to cover the whole town of Penfield and the town of Webster. East Webster is a bit busier. That's basically from Harbor Road and east, 651 calls. We've dropped 23 of those. West Webster, 468 calls, and we've dropped 13 of those. Total, 1,119, mutual aid at 36. And without a gap of coverage for the town of Penfield. Our coverage for the town of Penfield is also right around the 97% threshold as well. Next slide. A little bit smaller print, but besides just taking calls, there's a lot of community involvement with the town of Webster. One thing that I've loved and I've learned a lot about this community is it's very engaged. Whether it's taking a phone call and our understanding of somebody in the community's not understanding of how EMS is going to work, we provide that to them, and I do appreciate this community's engagement on this topic. And they've asked a lot of great questions, and they've helped us a bit too. Staffing and support for the solar eclipse on April 8th. We've helped out that day with the Parks and Rec, with their event. The summer celebration just 2 weeks ago, provided a bunch of staff in an ambulance provided ambulance for West Webster and Webster Fire Department trainings and events. We worked with the Monroe County Office of Emergency Management. Some people may not know this, but those folks that especially live in East Webster, you are in the evacuation zone for Gannett. We had to do some planning now that being the responders in that community, we could have to deal with the radiological emergency or an evacuation. Not something we're familiar with in Penfield, but something we had to take on and learn. And we even participated in an exercise at Rochester General Hospital with some FEMA representatives. It's something we learned a ton about just a few weeks ago. We've also worked with the Webster Central School District, with their resource officer, with their health and safety officer. We supported their DWI drills. One of them was rained out. One of them did take place just last week. We did support both graduations and did have an ambulance at. And we did also participate in the Memorial Day Parade for the Webster American Legion. We did provide standbys for that and also had an ambulance in the parade. And our ambulance coverage and standby for assistance for the upcoming Webster Firemen's Parade and Carnival in just about 2 to 3 weeks. That will be potentially about 100 hours. We're also going to work one of the stands for them, but also provide first aid coverage for the carnival and transporting ambulances for the parade and event itself. So besides taking on 1,400 calls, there's been 1,100 calls, 1,400 in Penfield. There's been a lot for us to do and really move into this community and learn. Any questions from Tom Ward?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to commend you and your team on ramping up to cover all of Webster. It was a tough lift, and you guys really stepped up. And 96% coverage is phenomenal. So, and then you look at the community engagements. That's equally as important. We greatly appreciate all the work that you and your team has put forward.
Thanks. There's tons of things. I mean, this only touches the major. There's been tons of meetings with, businesses in the town and meeting folks, but these are the major manpower events that we've assisted with.
I would also like to comment on that. I know that one of the concerns when we moved forward was that we were not going to have our community hometown emergency medical response people, and I think that you have gone above and beyond to become part of the community, and you've shown that Webster is really no different than Penfield, and that you have our community's best interest at heart, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
And along those lines, Betty, about the hometown ambulance, which is I think, very important to the community. Two things I want to say about that is that the Penfield Volunteer Ambulance staff, leadership, Dan, Glenn, and also their board have been great in this because we've been very candid with them that we really can't. We did a contract for 9 months through the end of December. We've been trying to be upfront with them that we're looking at long-term options. We owe the community that, and I won't take your thunder away, Russ, for what you're about to. And there were some things that they did that are somewhat leap of faith to cover Webster as quickly as you did after we had our previous agency give us a 90-day notice. But within that, part of being hometown is where your ambulances are based and where your EMTs and paramedics are coming out of it. And I thought it was great that you got the Gravel Road Firehouse in Webster, and I think the one also up for Northeast Joint on Phillips Road.
Yes.
To have an ambulance there for Penfield Volunteer Ambulance, to have the EMTs and paramedics, to be able to be inside of a building, kitchen, couch, when they're not on a call, instead of having to sit in the rig in the driveway or a parking lot. Those EMTs and paramedics work their tails off, and it's just, we've talked about it. It's a disrespectful thing to stage them in a parking lot. And so I really applaud the efforts you made with the fire departments here in town. And that really gives us that hometown ambulance. You're here right now, so I hope that's not taking away Russ's thunder. Anything else, Jen?
Are you based in other places around Webster, or just those two?
Just those two. We do tend to backfill, which is technically the town of Penfield, at the State and Plank Road Firehouse. It's one of West Webster's firehouses, but if both towns become depleted of resources and we have one resource left, we put a resource there because it is in the middle of 72 square miles. And again, compliments to making this team work. The fire departments have been very cooperative and willing to allow us to utilize their firehouses, to Tom's point, where we don't have to stage and post in parking lots. To the comfortable work environment, because it's an employee workplace and we're very mindful of that and the retention.
Excellent, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's
Thank
very
you,
good.
folks. Appreciate it.
It's very good that I heard a lot of good compliments about you guys, and I saw your ambulance out on the road when I'm on the road, and I feel very confident, and the communities too. They'll be happy, and thank you so much for your service.
Thank you, Jenny.
Danny, thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Appreciate it. And as I had said, that kind of gives a totally thorough update of where we're at in the short term. And now for where we're at in the long term, Russ Siskin, if you mind taking the podium and leading us through that.
It's a hard act to follow. Obviously, they're out doing such a great job. But before they had that opportunity to do that and show themselves, the town had asked to have a committee to discern long-term solutions. I know that print is pretty small, but I can talk through it. And so back in February, when NEQ's time was coming to an end, I worked with John Cahill, Councilman Cahill, and we put together a committee of EMS professionals that could look at potentially the longer-term solutions that comprised of EMTs, paramedics, EMS agency chiefs, billing folks, legal and accounting expertise were on this committee. And the mission was really just to counsel the town of Webster on the various long-term EMS options available when considering their municipal authority within New York State. And the first charge was developed, that we did was to develop an RFI, a request for interested parties, to see out of the I think 21 agencies that are in and around the area, to see who might be interested in providing long-term solutions to the town. And it's just a simple question, it is a very small document, simply asking, would you be interested, Mr. or Mrs. EMS agency, in looking at providing long-term EMS response to the town of Webster? So we created a small RFI, and that was sent out in May with a deadline of June 24th, which is now passed, for folks to respond to. And there was 21 agencies that it was sent to, and we got 2 formal responses. Obviously, Penfield responded, and Monroe Ambulance also responded that they'd be interested. There were 5 formal no responses and 14 folks that didn't respond at all. So you say, well, what's next in this process? Well, the next piece would be to create a more formal RFP, request for proposal, to send out to those that responded yes, and to get more detailed information about the agencies and their abilities and interest in responding to the town, along with reviewing some of the pros and cons that might be associated with other options that the town may have, such as forming their own department, like other municipalities around New York State have. Not many, but a few. So that process, as June 24th is just passed, we just finally got the last of the responses. We'll be looking at that in the coming weeks, and that's pretty much it. Any questions from the board?
Do you have any idea what the timeline of coming back to the board with some findings on these would be?
Well, we have to create the RFP,
Right.
right, which is a bit of an arduous process in of itself, although we do have a template to use, and we have to review with the town the kind of things that it wants to see in there, for instance, metrics, financial obligations, this kind of thing. So until we actually can create that RFP and get it out, I couldn't answer that question. I mean, I think a reasonable time to respond to it would be 30 to 60 days, right? So, hopefully we can produce an RFP in 30 to 60 days.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think that's a rough estimate, so 60 to 120 days.
I would hope that because our current contract goes through the end of the year, that perhaps we'd be looking at something by the end of October. Would that be
Oh,
reasonable?
yeah, I mean, I think you need at least 60 days at the end as well.
Correct.
I'm curious, how many non-municipal or commercial ambulances were included in the 21 RFIs that went out?
Municipal?
I don't know, am I using the wrong, maybe I'm using the wrong term.
Yeah, we wouldn't get another town to respond.
A town, well, I'm considering a town ambulance
No,
municipal, but it's a town ambulance.
No, there's no municipal ambulances that would be available.
Like Penfield
Yeah.
being a town. So I
Well,
might be calling it the wrong thing, but there are other ambulance agencies that aren't associated with the town, like Monroe and AMR, and putting those in a different
They're,
category.
all the agencies are private. Whether they carry the name of a town that's their choice. I mean, these folks could be,
I see,
Dan and Glenn's.
I didn't realize
It
that.
could be Dan and Glenn's ambulance. I mean, that's what I voted for, but they turned it down. So no, there's no, those kind of situations.
I
that exist.
understand.
I think all 21 that were sent out were either non-for-profit EMS agencies or
Yes,
profit.
but all private companies.
They're all private
They're
companies.
all private.
And it's interesting, in Monroe County, the only town of the 19 towns that has municipal authorities with New York State is the town of Webster.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Honey-
well,
Honeywell Falls.
And I think village-wise,
Honeywell Falls,
whatever,
yes.
Honeywell Falls, I think, have their
Yes.
own ambulance department under their authorities, but
Honey Falls meant it's
as Russ said, there's other, and part of the long-term, review pros and cons of the town of Webster using its current New York State authorities to create an EMS department. We own, town government
Yep.
Yeah.
owns
It's pretty-
ambulances,
rigs.
owns rigs, owns
That is pretty rare.
Employees.
It is rare.
But it exists, but it's rare.
The other 18 towns in Monroe County, they would not have to look at that option. They don't have municipal authorities.
Right.
We do. And that's a whole nother kettle of fish story of how we got it. But I do want to just say, and I mean, the questions might come from this side, that Russ is a very highly accomplished business owner, entrepreneur, but has 30-plus years of EMS experience, both as the chairman of the board of NOVA, North Onondaga Volunteer Ambulance, which is Clay, New York,
Yep.
and also the boots on the ground CEO of running that operation. And you might say, well, what is he, 30 years and he's running that organization, why is he here? Well, he moved to Webster 10 years ago?
2010, I moved here.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
15 almost years.
Yeah.
And, I'm paraphrasing what you said to me, is that when you moved here, the Clay Group, we still need you in the leadership of NOVA. And so, interestingly enough, we lucked out having a citizen, one of our people that live in Webster that has that kind of background, not only in EMS, but has run successful businesses, started and run and sold successful businesses. So that's a real feather in our cap to have someone like him co-chairing a committee along with John Cahill, our town councilman, who has been the liaison to EMS for however many years. And that I call it the dream team initially, who they got to get on this consultant committee is a really impressive group of EMS chiefs and billing people, and like you said, I've been very impressed by it. The smartest thing they did, your committee, was say that I couldn't be on it. That's when I knew that they were very intelligent.
And that was after the first meeting, correct?
Yeah, they said, no, you need to go. And I'm like, oh, okay. So,
Well, thanks, Tom.
thank
Any
you.
other questions?
Any or?
Thank you for all you do for us.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Russ.
Thank you, Russ.